Last week, I gave you guys an introduction to Suckless software and DWM, the Suckless window manager. I showed you guys where to get the software, how to download it, as well as how to install it, but I didn't actually go over how to configure the software or change anything around from the default settings. Because DWM and the rest of the Suckless utilities are very different than anything you may have used in the past before. They're even different than other window managers like i3, because if you want to change anything about it, you have to edit the source code directly. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that today. I'm here in my DWM folder. And the first thing that I'm going to show you how to change is the buttons for DWM to make different movements. So we want to go into our config.h file. And right here where it says static key keys, these are all of the different buttons that control the actions in DWM. And also up here, this was the first thing I actually changed, is the mod key mask. So by default, this is going to say define mod key mod 1 mask. The mod key is just what you hold in combination with these other buttons here, because of course if just D did something, that would be kind of stupid. You'd be accidentally running DWM commands while you're typing. So you have to hold down the mod key plus these different keys over here. Now by default, the mod 1 mask is the alt key, and I don't really like the alt key to be using it in combination with these other buttons. It's just in a weird position for me. So I changed it to 4, which is the super key or the Windows key, whatever you want to call the key that's between Control and Alt. That's what mod 4 mask maps to. So you can change that if you want. And when we come down here, like I said, these are the actual keys, and it gives you a description over here where it says function, what it actually is. So the spawn DWM command, so that actually opens up DWM up here. It's only going to open that if you've actually installed, not DWM, I meant to say D menu. It's only going to open up D menu if you've actually installed D menu, which is another Suckless utility. It's kind of like a start menu, just lets you access different programs on your systems. Like I could do Firefox to launch Firefox. You could change the term command, so this is what will actually spawn a terminal. So I have it as super key enter right now. Ink master, of course, that'll just increment the window into the master stack and then decrement the master. Even though it says ink master, but you know it's decrement because it's doing -1. So this is how to just change the buttons, but what if we want to actually extend the functionality of DWM? Because it's a very minimalist program. All of the Suckless utilities are designed that way, to come with very few features, and then it's up to the end user to add in any type of new features that they would want. So to get those new features, head on over to suckless.org and go over to the spot for whichever program it is that you want to patch. Of course, in this video, I'm going to be doing DWM. And on the left-hand side, you'll see where it says patches here. So click on that, and it's going to load, depending on the program, a whole bunch of different patches. So I'm going to be looking for a patch that is going to allow me to go to the next or the previous tag. So up here where it says 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through 9, these are the tags that DWM has. You can think of tags sort of like workspaces. They just allow you to spawn different programs in those different workspaces. Now, by default, if you want to go to any particular tag, you have to hit the button combination of mod key plus the number on your keyboard that corresponds to the tag you want to go to. I can even show you here in the source code. So here you go. This is where this is all the different combinations. So you see it's just the mod key plus whichever number. So I can go to tag 1 by doing mod key 1, I can go to 2, mod key 2, so on and so forth. But I can't just hit a button to go from 2 to 3 or from 3 to 4. So you can't really go to the next or the previous tag. All you can really do is jump tags. And for some of the middle tags, like to go to 5, for example, it's a little awkward to hit the window key plus 5. Same thing to go to 6. Just those two in the middle really are a little awkward to get to. So let's look for a patch that'll let me do next and previous tags. So this one here, next previous tag, does exactly what we're looking for it to do. Now, we're not actually going to use this particular patch because even the author of this next previous tag is telling us that ShiftView is a better implementation. So let's go take a look at ShiftView. And just to show you that it really is, so this is the function for next previous tag. And if we take a look at ShiftView, you see it's quite a bit shorter. All of this up here is just comments. So it's maybe 10 lines of code, and this one's closer to 20. So we don't want that. Now, what we're looking at here is actually C source code. It's just a function. We can see that the function is going to be inside of a file called ShiftView.c. And this is just the function that allows us to go to next or previous tag. So the way that we would actually patch this into DWM, because this is a separate file, let me get out of this real quick. So we can see that in our DWM folder, there is no file called ShiftView.c. So this is just a separate function. We can save page as to download this, and then just make sure that in the name it ends with C and not TXT or something silly like that. That way you know that it's actually going to be a C file, and then you can just go ahead and save that. And I've already got it in there. Let's just go ahead and replace it. So now this is in my downloads folder. So I'm just going to copy from my downloads folder into this folder. So I now have ShiftView inside of my DWM folder, and I am already 80% of the way done to patching in this functionality. So the next thing we have to do, because this is a separate function and a separate file, is we're going to have to include it inside of our config.h, and then we're going to have to define which button we want to actually call that ShiftView function. Now, I've already done a little bit of, would it be like Betty Crockett by setting up this stuff in my file already. I just commented it out. So you'll want to do this here, include ShiftView.c, so that this config.h file can actually access that ShiftView function. And then come down here and define the buttons. So I'm going to define my next tag button as window key N, and then my previous tag button as window key B. So let's go ahead and right quit this, and let's recompile DWM. All right, and then that should have compiled with 0 errors as long as you didn't make any type of mistakes when entering everything in. As long as you didn't forget any semicolons or make any other type of spelling mistakes. So now, if I want to actually start DWM with this functionality, we're going to, of course, quit out of it, and then start X again. And now I can do window key N to go to the next tags, window key B to go to previous tags. And that's the other great thing about ShiftView instead of the next previous tag is it actually allows you to wrap around. So let's go back to that folder because there's one other thing I'm going to show you guys. This one here. All right. So let's go back to DWM. Now that was a really easy patch that I showed you guys because it's literally just a separate function file and then a couple of lines of code. I'm going to show you guys how to install a more complicated patch. So let's find the one that does gaps. I think it's this one here. Let me see. Yeah, it's this one here. So what FullGaps is going to let us do, if you ever noticed in my other Gen 2 videos where I had my window manager that was already configured, there were gaps in between the windows and the bar and then in between both of the other windows. I like that just because it kind of lets me keep track of things a little bit better when everything's not mushed together. So that's what this FullGaps does. Now with FullGaps, you see that we have not a C file, but we have this DIFF file. So let's click on that and take a look at it. Now at first glance, it seems like it's just a whole bunch of gobbledygook, or it's just a bunch of source code, but this isn't just source code. This is source code along with instructions for a program that you already have on your system called Patch. So what Patch allows you to do is it allows you to merge pieces of code from a diff file into multiple files that are already on your system. So if we take a look at this, it's going to target the file config.def.h. And because it's going to do that, what I should probably do is do this real quick. Config.def.h.back. Let's cp config.h to config.def.h. Because I edited the config.h directly, and this one's going to edit config.def.h, so I just basically backed up config.def.h and then made a copy of config.h to the def.h. So what this is going to do is it's going to target that file, and then everywhere that you see a plus, this is a line of code that's going to be added to that file, and anywhere that you see a minus is lines of code that's going to be subtracted. Now, it doesn't look like it's actually going to subtract anything from config.def.h, but it is going to be subtracting some stuff from dwm.c. So it's going to be patching this file as well as this file. Sounds really complicated, but it's not. It's actually really simple. I know that the Suckless devs, they want to keep their community small and elitist, but you don't have to be like a super elite C wizard. I mean, as long as you're smart enough to follow along with this video, then you're smart enough to use Suckless utilities. So I already have it downloaded. Let me just go ahead then and copy it into this folder. So it's in home, Kenny, downloads, and it's DWM FullGaps diff. Copy it here. All right, so once you have that diff file in your directory, all you should have to do is just patch it. Now, before I do this, I'm just gonna warn you guys that sometimes patch will fail, especially if you've already made a lot of edits to your DWM configuration, because these diff files, the instructions are given for an unedited DWM config. So if you've already changed it a lot, some things might fail, and then if it fails with patch, you have to just go in and patch it manually, which basically means that you gotta copy and paste from this FullGaps into the corresponding DWM files, and you just have to pay close attention and put all the lines of code where they're supposed to go. So let's see if this will work. Patch DWM FullGaps diff. And this already failed, so it's saving the regex to config.def.h.rej, so it just created this file. It looks like it was able to patch dwm.c properly. So what I'm going to guess is the include line and maybe the lines where I put the buttons for ShiftView. That probably was enough to actually throw patch off and confuse it a bit. So let's first vim into config.def.h.rej. And it looks like those 3 lines is the only part that failed. So let's just patch that in manually. All right, so let's open config.def.h. All right, so now we want to pay attention to this and see where this is actually going to go. So it looks like this is going to go under wherever xk period is. So let's look for that. xk period. All right, right here. So for whatever reason, it wasn't able to patch that in. Let's see. Is my shift view, or I think my shift view is defined below it. So it must have been this include line that threw it off, because the shift view actually comes after where that stuff is supposed to go. All right, so let's just copy these lines. And then paste them in, and just delete that, delete that, delete that. Okay, that looks good. Doesn't look like anything is screwed up there. And yeah, that's the only lines that it didn't copy over. So let's quit out of that. Let's right quit this. And let's go ahead and compile it now, see if it works. And we have one other problem here, gap X. All right, let's see what that's all about. All right, I figured out what the problem was. It was a silly mistake on my part because, like I said, I'm used to just editing my config.h file directly. So the reason why that build just had an error, so it was actually nothing to do with dwm.c. I paused the video and looked through that source code to make sure everything was correct. The problem was that we patched config.def.h, but we still have this config.h file present. Now, the config.h file, if you remember, was just a backup of everything to config.def.h. So what we actually have to do to get this to build correctly is we can now get rid of that config.h file, and then we want to rename config.def.h to just config.h. And now I should be able to build without any errors. And sure enough, we did. So let's now go ahead and kill DWM again. And now I should have DWM with gaps. And I do have gaps, but my setRes script did not start properly. Come on, start correctly. There we go. That's an ongoing bug that I'm still trying to figure out, is how to properly set my resolution automatically when I start DWM. Right now I'm doing it in Exinit, but I guess I got to come up with a better approach. So anyway, now you can see that there are gaps between the windows and other windows as well as the bars. So now it just looks a whole lot neater. And you can change the size of these gaps too. So we go to root, config, default DWM, DWM 6.2. I believe it's in the config.h. We'll look for gaps. I don't think that's it. That should just, yeah, that increases and decreases the size. I wonder if there's a way that I can statically set it though. Gap. Here we go. Okay, gap X. Yeah, so here you can change this number. You can increase it to make the gaps larger. You can decrease it to make the gaps smaller. So this is exactly all you have to do to actually add patches to DWM. Now, like I said, like you saw, sometimes it can fail and then you just have to patch it manually. But all you really have to do is open up the diff file in a Vim tab, open up the files that patch would normally be patching in other tabs, and then just go through and copy and paste it manually, make sure it's formatted and everything, and then eventually you'll be able to remake your DWM source code without any errors. All right, guys, so any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments section. I'll get back to you, or someone else who's smart is going to get back to you. This has been how to patch Suckless programs. Hope you guys learned something.